If you've been away from riding for a few weeks or even a few months, what's the best way for you to get back in the saddle and get your horse fit again so that you're both enjoying every ride? If this is your first time joining me, I'm Ann Gage, the horse riding confidence coach and the author of Confident Rider, Confident Horse. If you're joining the live, please pop in the comments, say hi, let me know you're watching. And if you're watching the replay, type in replay and let me know you're watching. And please do type in any questions or comments as we go along. Hey, Priscilla. So these are what I'm going to share with you are my steps that I take horses and riders through who have been away from riding for a while, who haven't worked in the saddle for a while. It's really important to ensure that the horse is mentally and physically ready, and so are you. So the first step is check your tack. Hi, Robbie. I had a client recently. A lot of people have had a lot of time off from riding for the last 2 or 3 months. And this rider checked her stirrup leathers. She was going to buy new ones anyway, but it's a good thing she checked because the stitching on the leather was starting to wear away, and that could have ended in a nasty accident. So check the repair of your leather. It's maybe been sitting around for a while. Check all the stitching, check that there's no sharp points that are gonna, the stuffing's all okay on the underside, so nothing is going to be wearing on your horse or creating sore points on your horse. I actually years ago had a horse who, unfortunately, there was a little nail that had worked its way through the flocking and was driving into his back, and it did cause him, understandably, to bolt with his rider. So check those things. Check your stirrup leathers, check your billet straps, your girth attachments, check all of that stuff, and your bridle as well, including the bit. I actually had a bit break on me once many years ago while I was riding. So check all of those things. Then the second step is to give your horse a checkup. So things like, when did they last have their teeth looked at? Do they need any body work? Maybe, and don't assume that just because they haven't been ridden that the bodies aren't going to be sore, because, just like we can wake up one night or one morning and have a crick in our neck, horses can do the same thing. They can make a move and something can get out of alignment, a rib even. So just sort of put your hands on your horse, check if there's any tender spots, if they're reactive to touches, particularly around the girth, on the back, and check their teeth so they're ready to have that bit put in the mouth if you ride with a bit. And then the next step is start with groundwork. Don't undervalue groundwork. It can be used not just to, for an excited horse sort of to get the edge off, which is what we used to do back in the days when I was showing hunters. We used to lunge the horse to get the buck out. So we said, we want to use groundwork to prepare the horse for being ridden. So I look at groundwork as helping the horse develop the muscles and the posture that I want him to have and he needs to have to be able to carry me when I'm sitting on his back. So that can include in hand work, that can include walking up and down hills, that can include free lunging or lunging, using some poles, things that are going to get him engaging his hindquarter, engaging his core, lifting his back, because those are the muscles he needs when he's being ridden. And so that was step number 3. Step number 4 is your own fitness. What have you been doing since you have not been riding? Hi, Suzanne. And, maybe if you've been off because you had an injury, then have you taken care of rehabilitating that injury and the supporting muscles around that injury? How's your cardio? how are your leg muscles, how's your upper body strength, how's your core strength, because all of those things we need for riding, and your suppleness, stretching. So things like doing some simple stretches, doing some cardio work like walking, a little bit of yoga, anything that can help you improve your core strength before you get in the saddle. Of course, when you're doing your groundwork with your horse, you can be doing things like engaging your core. You can be doing some stretching. You can be, if you're walking up and down hills with your horse, that's a good way to get some fitness for yourself. And then the first rides should be very, very short, because remember, if your horse has had a lot of time off, they've lost that muscle along the back that they need, and the core muscle that they need to carry a saddle and a rider. So first rides when I'm getting on a horse is no more than 15 minutes at the walk. And it's all about getting the horse bending around my leg, being light in my hands, and encouraging them to do some stretching, and again engaging the hindquarters. So that walking could be doing some little bit of light leg yielding, a little bit of lateral work, a little bit of spiraling in and out circles. Nothing too strong, nothing too deep. Think of how much you want to bend, or how much you can bend after you haven't done any exercise for a while, and give that to your horse. And then add on to that that riding time, maybe 5 minutes each ride. Have good forward walk with your horse engaged and lifting his back before you start to look at doing trot work. If you have the opportunity, you happen to live where there are hills, then again, you can be walking your horse up and down hills. Just build it up gradually, build his muscles gradually, build his cardiovascular fitness gradually as well. And even though you might just be walking for 10, 15, 20 minutes at first, think of it as a warm-up, a work, and a cool down. So working walk can involve lengthening and shortening the gait, walking slowly and more quickly. It can involve lots of changes of direction. It can involve walk-halt transitions. You can even do a little bit of backing up. All of those things, as long as the horse is doing it in the correct posture, is going to help improve his muscles. So those are my 5 tips for getting back in the saddle. Check your tack, number 1. Number 2, check your horse. Number 3, start with groundwork. Do not undervalue the groundwork. And keep in mind that the groundwork you're doing, you're wanting to build the muscles your horse needs, the posture your horse needs for being ridden. Check on your own fitness. Do some yoga, build some core strength, build your cardiovascular fitness, and keep your first rides very short. Don't overwork. You can't do, it's easy to do too much and ask too much of the horse, rather than keeping the sessions short. So let's see, are there any comments coming to me today? Suzanne says, that's what I did today with one. That's great. What part did you do, Suzanne? The riding part, the groundwork part? I know that some of you that are with me live have had some time off from riding, and that you have been doing some groundwork. Are there any issues you've come up against with doing the groundwork with your horses? Any questions you have about that part? And as you're doing the groundwork as well, it's an opportunity for you to work on your own mindset, to check in. You can educate or learn to read your horse more, become more familiar with your horse. It's a great way to build that partnership back up if you have not been able to spend a lot of time with your horse during that layoff, whether that was due to something like the COVID where the barn was closed, or an injury that didn't allow you to get to the barn, or other circumstances that prevented you from getting to the barn. Because this applies not just in this time in our lives, but any time in our lives. I have a client who Hasn't been able to ride since October. His horse started to show some signs of resistance. We checked her back. She had a sore back. Her saddle didn't quite fit properly. And so we had get book in the saddle fitter. It all takes time. And then he decided to take the plunge and invest in a custom saddle for himself and his horse. And so that took some time. And so the horse has now had 6 months off from riding. During this time, he's been able to carry on with the groundwork, which has been really helpful, and deal with some other issues as well, including some separation anxiety. And now we're getting him back in the saddle, and he has been working with a personal trainer, so things like his core strength are still pretty good. Suzanne says grounding, riding, short at walk, turns and bounding. Very good. Bliss Ranch did this today, stretching and working on the walk. Felt awesome. Great. Yeah, great 15-minute ride is fantastic, and much better than, thinking, oh, I got to ride for an hour. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. No matter how long a horse has been, how fit a horse is, sometimes if you get what you want at the beginning of the ride in the first 15, 20, 30 minutes, quit. You don't need to keep going for the sake of going. One other thing I was going to say about the tack check too is if the horse is like this mare had 6 months off, then the muscles are going to change as well. So the muscle development is going to decrease if the horse is just, turned out in a paddock for several months. So you want to check again the saddle fit, even if it fit before you stopped riding, so that it just might need a little shim pad until the muscles develop again. But it's so important that saddle fit. I actually was working with another client, a new client, and a pony who goes really fast and with his head up in the air. And I met with them last week and just saw her ride him a little bit. But I went back for the real session today, their coaching session today. And as she was putting the saddle on, I said, no, here's the problem. This saddle does not fit this pony. It's too tight in the shoulders, and so it was sitting not quite that far, but it was unbalanced. So the back was lower than the front. And she said, oh, should I just put a pad under that to level it up? Well, no, because that you lift the back of that saddle up. Now we've got this narrow tree at the front pressing down even more onto the horse's shoulders. So it's and the other thing was the channel between the pads on the bottom of the saddle was too narrow for his spinal processes. So the purpose of the saddle is to keep the rider off the horse's spine, to keep the weight, distribute the weight evenly and keep it off the horse's spine. But if that channel is too narrow, so the spine, there's the part that the spinal cord goes through, the little round bit, and then there's these wings that come off the side, the spinal processes. And if the saddle sits on those spinal processes, that's painful as well. So this particular saddle was too narrow in the front, so it's pressing right down onto the top of his shoulders. It was the channel was wider at the front, got narrower at the back, and so you've already got that narrow channel sitting on top of the spinal processes, and then because the saddle was tilted like this, then you got the rider's weight added to that. So no wonder the pony was going the way he was going. We put a different saddle on that fit him better, and did a little work because, of course, he has the expectation that being ridden is uncomfortable, and had him going quite nicely in a nice, calm walk during the lesson. Hey, Bev. Suzanne, you found that with my April, the year you came. What a life changer. Yeah, I mean, I just keep learning more and more about saddle fit and how it affects not only the horse, but also the rider. Because if you're sitting in a saddle that's balanced like this, you cannot sit in the correct position. The horse cannot lift his back. Even, if he's trying, he physically cannot do it. There's just so much pain getting in the way. So I cannot emphasize enough. Check your saddle every 6 months. Check your saddle. because the horse's body changes with work, it changes with age, and of course there's wear and tear on the saddle as well. I always encourage people who ride English that if you can, get a flocked saddle, because as long as the tree fits, the flocking can be adjusted with as the horse changes. So yeah, I go on to a bit of a rant about saddle fits because it affects the horses so much. And again, the rider, and if you're dealing with confidence issues as well, if you are not balanced in the saddle, then that alarm, is going off in your brain saying, we're not balanced, we're not balanced, we're in trouble. And that adds to your anxiety, even though you're not consciously aware of it. So I don't see any other questions or comments coming in. I'm going to remind you, this is the final week to register for our Focused and Fit to Ride program that I'm doing with Shona Jameson of Cherry Tree Training. The doors close on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. British Summer Time. That's 7:59 Eastern. And come and join the wonderful group of people that have already signed up. And we will help you get physically fit and mentally fit for getting back in the saddle. And thank you so much for joining me. Come and join Shona and I tomorrow. We're doing another live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. British Summertime. What is that? 11 a.m. Pacific. And we'll be giving you some more tips for getting mentally and physically ready to get back in the saddle. That's it for now. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and I will put the link for Focused and Fit to Ride in the comments, so come back and check that.